All right, well, I guess this is as good a time as any to get started. I know people are still actively coming in through the virtual lobby, but we can get started here. So first of all, thank you for everyone joining and everyone who will join in the next handful of minutes. We are here for a panel discussion on EdTech partnerships for digital capacity building. Hopefully you all can see my screen. I'll just be going through a handful of slides, but we do want to make this as interactive as possible. We ask that you hold your questions until the end. Either hold on to them or chat or type them into the chat window. We will be monitoring them. And so feel free to also raise your hand, but we'll try to get to those questions at the end. They'll just make things flow a little bit quicker, but we promise to go through the content in a timely manner. So to start things off, my name is Apurva Chandra. I am the nonprofit training lead as part of the Microsoft Tech for Social Impact team. So I will be moderating this panel discussion. In my role, I work with nonprofits all around the world on training content, training platforms to better help nonprofits build digital capacity inside of their organization to drive their missions forward. Today, we're going to be talking about a platform in particular that has gotten a fair amount of traction among nonprofits in the last 2 years, I would say. Moving to the next slide, I am joined today, there you go. I'm joined today by Robin from NRC as well as Mac from UNICEF. They will be driving the majority of this conversation. Microsoft has done a lot of work over the last handful of years with NRC and UNICEF, and they're both great partners of ours, and they are using the Microsoft Community Training Platform in really innovative ways. I won't go into too much detail right here, but just please look forward to that because they do have a lot of great stories, a lot of great just humanitarian experience. They've been all around the world, used a lot of different technology platforms. So I know you all will benefit a lot from hearing about their experience. Before we do dive into their sections, let me just talk a minute about the technology, the tool that we're going to be talking about. I mean, we all know technology is just a tool, and it's really about how you use the platform. And so we've inside of Microsoft, we've built a platform called Microsoft Community Training that is built on top of Azure. For those of you who are familiar with the Azure Cloud Computing Service, it is a white label platform, and it's designed to enable learning for everyone, everywhere. So with the onset of COVID, especially over the last year, it's really jump-started a lot of organizations who have been looking to figure out how do you enable mass learning and mass training when your learners are distributed all over the world and you can't reach them. So we've definitely seen a lot of engagement over the last year for the Microsoft Community Training Platform, and largely because it does support learning in low bandwidth areas and even offline. And I know Mac and Robin will both be talking about that offline aspect and especially talking about using the platform on a mobile device. And I mentioned like learning at a mass scale, but something that you all might be interested in as well is just the ability to track and monitor and see who is going through the training content, who's struggling, the ability to have quizzes, exams, everything that you would expect from a learning tool of this sort. And we'll certainly go into a lot more of the details of it in a minute, but just want to mention that at a very, very high level, it is a mobile optimized learning platform that's been designed for emerging markets and designed really to reach those that have been left behind in the learning and training sphere, those for whom traditional learning methods just aren't sufficient. And so we built the service on top of Azure, very lightweight, so organizations like NRC and UNICEF could build on top of it and really make it their own. And I wanted to mention, so you're going to hear today about a couple of very specific use cases. I wanted to mention kind of at a high level what we've seen other organizations use the platform for. We talked about like mass youth, young adult skilling initiatives. So a lot of the deployments that we're using with Microsoft Community Training involve working with the local government, and a local nonprofit to really enable us to have the most odds of success. We've also seen organizations that have been using the platform to train their own employees. So I mentioned that this platform can be used to reach anyone, right? Whether that's employees of yours, whether that's volunteers of yours, or in the case of both UNICEF and NRC, youth or program beneficiaries, as we sometimes call it. Really, whatever type of training scenario you're looking for, odds are Microsoft Community Training can be used that way. So I wanted to kind of set that scope and scale before we dive into very specific use cases. And we've also seen local governments use the platform as a citizen outreach program. So something to think about as well. And if you do have questions about, is this something that my organization could use, please do hold on to those questions and we'll address them at the end. So, we talked about, we're going to talk very specifically today about the work that we're doing with NRC and UNICEF, but I did also want to mention that we're doing a fair amount of work across the world. I want to highlight a couple in Africa that we're working on with in particular. So we're doing work with the African Development Bank, which is with the government of Egypt, as well as the government of Nigeria. We're also doing some work with WinRock, which is based in Nairobi. And we're also doing a lot of work with the NetHope Africa chapter. So a lot of the use cases that I mentioned in the previous slide are covered by some of the deployments that you see here. We probably won't have time today to go specifically into each of these use cases, but again, like if you do have questions about them, please hold on to them and hold on to them until the end. And you'll have my contact information at the end, so we'll be able to go through that as well. So that is the end of my opening spiel. We'll get to the main act here, which first I'll hand things over to Mac and UNICEF. Microsoft and UNICEF have been working together to build something called the Learning Passport over the last handful of years, and Mac's been a fantastic partner on this journey. It certainly has been a journey, and I will hand things over to him to talk a little bit more about it and how it fits in with UNICEF's overall goals. So Mac, over to you, and just let me know. I'll transfer the slides. So.
Thanks, Apurva. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you joining. My name is Mac Levinsky. I am the global manager of the Learning Passport, which is kind of the flagship partnership program between UNICEF and Microsoft. I've been working in UNICEF for, I think, 12 years now. Pretty much at the intersection of humanitarian work and technology. I sit in the Education in Emergencies team in the education section in New York and run a global team that is working to support our countries and governments and partners implementing the Learning Passport, which hopefully you'll have a clear understanding of by the time I'm done today. So next slide, please, Apurva. So the Learning Passport is our title of basically the product that we're developing with Microsoft based off of Microsoft Community Training, the platform that Apurva discussed. It syncs quite well with, I think, UNICEF's mission prior to COVID and then post-COVID too. We've just seen a real acceleration in the space, which is to enable access to quality education materials with all the nice stuff that comes with it in the MCT platform. Individualized learner records, personalized learning journeys, the ability to curate different content sets for different user groups, of which we have many, which I'll go into. And really the mission is to improve learning outcomes and go really from that spectrum from access to quality materials and content to learning, right? And that's where assessment comes in, the relationship with governments, et cetera. We're really interested in mobility too. Children on the move is a big focus group of UNICEF, the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, and we're seeing the adoption of the Learning Passport focus on that set of users in particular in a lot of really tough places, and especially as we talk around the offline ecosystem, we get to some really exciting and difficult stuff. But it really is education into opportunity pathways for the millions of users that we're targeting. We also had, next slide, please. The Learning Passport story is one really of diversity. So I think that you'll hear a lot from Robin around some real tailored and thoughtful approaches. What we really saw in kind of my role in UNICEF was to enable our country offices to utilize the platform to meet their needs, right? We don't really have a prescribed global approach. We're really an education program utilizing some very strong technology to meet the needs of our country offices of 120 and around the world. No two are the same, and that work for a bunch of different types of kids and youth. This slide here is a really fun collage for me. These are a sample of the different Learning Passport instances we have around the world. Most of them are branded, not even as the Learning Passport. You have Escola Bauma, you have Educatrachos in Honduras. I can't read half of these, of course, but really the idea is to show you the diversity of the application and really our program in letting our countries run with the technology, right? And the strong partnership with Microsoft, the fact that there's engineers underneath it that work with Robin and I to deliver new functionalities, and there's some that we're really excited about. There's some that we're going to start, new ones we're going to start testing soon. There's stuff that we have in flight, moving, and more countries joining all the time. We have 5 new countries launching, I think, before the second week of February. So that is quite frenetic and exciting and stressful. We're a global team too, so really utilizing the strength of UNICEF, covering the world and trying to respond to really these various needs. Can you, next slide, please, Apurva? Sorry, this is just so here we have some screenshots of just really illustrating the fact that all the content is entirely different too. Each of these instances is administered locally. They work with government to meet the use cases articulated in the programs, and we have everything moving from early childhood education. We have 6 countries in Eastern Europe moving on that. We have we're the national education platform, LMS, in a number of countries with your formal curriculum in primary and secondary levels. We have adolescent skills components. We have job skills components with a big TVET program in Lebanon as one of those launches coming up. And then we have instances that are focusing on teachers and administrators too, with some regional components kicking off in Eastern Africa and some other interesting things there. So really the purpose of this is to show you that no 2 learning passports are the same, no 2 are even named the same. And really thanks to the speed and the ability of Microsoft to pivot and respond to new requests with us, utilizing the strength of UNICEF, which is our presence and our relationship in so many different governments and different places, and the breadth of program, we found these flowers blooming kind of in the field that is the Learning Passport, particularly after COVID, which was a big story for us. Next slide, please. So here's the coverage. We have a number of things in flight with planes. We have a number of things launched or launching with houses. And this map, the shame whenever I present this, is already old because new countries are joining us all the time. Really realizing that, especially I think COVID revolutionized a lot of the way that UNICEF thinks around our education programming. Prior to COVID, we were really focusing on that offline element that I could really spend hours talking to you about. And working in difficult places. But when COVID happened, we made pretty much a call with senior Microsoft leadership and senior UNICEF leadership saying, we have the ability to deploy this with you. Let's have a conversation. There was a number of first mover countries. Timor-Leste was at the front of the pack, and it went from an introductory call to users live on a platform accessing their formal curriculum in 6 days. So the speed is something that we are focus on, but also adaptability and diversity, and that's something that we're really excited about and is really going to be a big focus in the year of 2021 as we onboard a number of new users in a number of new countries. Next slide, please, Purva. The partnership really founded with us, with UNICEF and Microsoft as the principal partners. Cambridge University was one of our foundational partners that came in and delivered a lot of content and tools that focus on the education space, like a curriculum framework, a way for countries to map curriculum together. We're in a very interesting place too, where we have a lot of local content, like contextualized stuff like formal curriculum or things in country, and then a global content base from OER companies like, your Khan Academies and your FETs, but also some private companies like Twig Education, Pearson, that have come joined hands with us to offer really world-class stuff. So the goal of the program is to have any learner, anywhere, anytime, be able to access the best in class in terms of content, whether that be formal curriculum or that global supplementary content base. And really, with a partner like Microsoft in very involved in this, the best in class in technology too, right? We have some of the kind of the smartest minds thinking around really complicated problems, how to get this tool in the hands of as many kids that need it, and youth and parents and teachers, et cetera. And so that's really been one of the joys from my position kind of at the global level, seeing the partnership come together. BCG's helped us out with some market analysis. Dubai Cares was another foundational partner. Sony is coming on board, and more people join kind of every month, realizing both the opportunity out there and the need. So it really is something that I think the problem statement is big enough that there is no shortage of seats around the table to try and address this. Next slide, Apurva. What we're really excited about in the next year, and really, I mean, when you're working with partners that we have and the scale of this program, we're already thinking into 2022. I'll be frank with you, in 2023, in terms of things we ask Apurva's teams to do for us, as well as our implementing partners. We, as I mentioned, have a number of new countries that will be launching public launches, kind of bigger ones, towards the end of the month and beginning of the next. We will be the national platform in Kosovo with the ability to integrate MCT into Microsoft Teams. We're dealing kind of in a high order of power. You're talking that's some really top line technology, using the full Teams suite, but having the Learning Passport integrated into it. So it provides that LMS functionality. At the same time, we're working on the offline model, which is bringing world-class digital education experiences to learners without an internet connection. And that's in some of the harder places like rural Sierra Leone, the north of Nigeria, Mosquito Coast, and Honduras. So we're looking at this track of kind of the entire spectrum of what you can do from technology. High-powered stuff for places that have persistent connectivity, towards more what you would consider on the concept of a cloud in a box for places without connectivity at all. And the beauty is the learners really, if we do this correctly, we'll get the same exact experience. So that's something that we're really excited about. Learningpassport.org is a place that you can find more info about our program. My contact info, I think, is in the speaker bios, et cetera. Feel free to reach out to me. We'll stick around for the chat. Happy to hear your questions. Hopefully I haven't spoken too long. I have a tendency to do that, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from the floor. And my colleague Robin, who will, I think, show you a bit of a different lens on this. So I'll pass it back to Apurva in the middle, and then looking forward to NRC's comments. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mac. Thanks for going through that. And I mean, the Learning Passport has been such an amazing partnership for us. So the Microsoft Community Training Platform was developed, I don't know, like a little bit more than 2 years ago, something like that. And UNICEF was one of the very first engagements that we had. And UNICEF, like, to their credit, saw this platform and saw it as an opportunity to really drive a lot of amazing learning outcomes all across the world. And so they've just been a fantastic partner. They've been with us at the very, very beginning. So we've built this platform really hand in hand with them. And they've constantly showed us what the platform could be and what it is today. So a lot of the functionality that we have here, a lot of the offline functionality, a lot of the mobile capabilities have been things that UNICEF showed us is important in terms of reaching kids in refugee camps all around the world, and what's really made the product what it is today. And organizations like NRC and Robin, who we're going to be talking to, have kind of seen that as well and taken it and kind of expanded it to make it their own. And so they're using it, not just to reach youth, but also their local staff, which is kind of all over the world as well. And so with that in mind, I'll hand things over to Robin. We're looking forward to hearing more about how you all are using MCT at NRC. And again, I'll continue to be monitoring the chat. So please put in your questions there, and I promise that we'll get to it when we're done here. So
Okay.
let me transfer the slide. All right.
All right, thanks so much, Apurva, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. It's great to see the active chat has already started, and can't wait to the end of presentations to get into the conversation. So as Apurva said, I'm going to kick off with sharing how we at NRC are currently using the MCT. Next slide, please, Apurva.
Yeah.
Super, thanks. So we actually have only two use cases or two instances that we're currently using. One is directed towards our staff. And for that instance, as Apurva mentioned, it's for our education staff. As part of our global education strategy, education expertise is one of the foundations within our strategy, and ensuring that our colleagues and our staff have the requisite skills that they need in order to deliver quality education programs. So we're using or leveraging MCT to be able to provide access to those training opportunities. For this particular instance, we decided that using the NRC email address was the best way to do login. It's completely integrated with Okta. And when our colleagues log in, they're automatically enrolled in a number of mandatory courses. So as soon as they log in for the first time, they've already populated, or they already have some of their training courses already as part of their My Courses. Of course, they can access all of the other training materials, study and go through the modules at their leisure when they have time. Currently, we have colleagues from 22 different countries active on the platform and learning from the content that we've provided. For both this instance and the other instance that I'm about to share with you now, we've set it up so that the platform itself is available in English, French, Arabic, and Spanish. The content at this time is English for the staff, but the platform has been set up to allow for colleagues or learners to be able to set up the platform in a language that they might be more comfortable with. And the second instance that we have, it's for the people we serve. Currently, we're using this as part of our youth education and training programs, as well as livelihood and food security programs, as part of pathways either to further employment or, further studies or towards employment. Because we have an older set of learners or users, we decided that using the mobile number for login credentials was the best option for this particular cohort. And each time that the learners or the users log in, they receive a one-time password. So it makes it easy. They don't have to worry about remembering their password, remembering what their email address is or whatnot to log in. So it makes it for a pretty fluid experience to log in. In terms of privacy, we have only collected the most basic information for our learners within this instance as well. It's only first name and last name that's used to help support tracking learning and issuing certificates and so on. And other than that, that's the extent of the information that we've looked to collect. Our courses are publicly available, but we've also activated or used the function of having some private courses that are not accessible to the public. And I'll share a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. And when we have learners as part of an NRC program, they're put into a learning group, and they have a group administrator and an instructor who follows them along on their learning journey. Mac mentioned you can track the learning, you can monitor, you can have some of the quizzes that help to provide some of those touch points along the way for assessment. And our original plans were to have this as part of a blended learning environment, using the platform within a physical space in our computer lab. So with COVID, that completely changed. And we were able to quickly use this technology to shift to have learning take place using the mobile app. So for the most part, our learners at this point in time are accessing the mobile app on their Android phone. They're able to access the content. They're able to download some of the content, providing they have the space on their phone to do so, consume it offline, and to have SMS and telephone calls and check-ins with their various instructors. So if you can go on to the next slide, I can share a little bit more information in terms of what types of training we're currently offering and how we're using the platform for these particular countries. For the first two countries, that are for Ethiopia and Kenya, they were part of our original pilot, our original plan to focus on supporting youth, to give them quality learning experiences, to be able to acquire basic digital literacy skills. Through our partnership with Microsoft, we've been able to access the really great content that they have, that both instructors and students have also said how much they value the content. So we have that in one shared library between all three contexts. Colleagues in Ethiopia have added additional readings that were part of their basic or their digital skills curriculum. They've also added quizzes, as I mentioned, to have some touch points throughout, which I think, especially with COVID, it's so much more important to have those assessments along the way. So it's part of that feedback mechanism for the instructor. So when they do call the student or they do set in an SMS to the student, they have that information in terms of how they're doing. For the most part, the content is almost exclusively in English, but we do have some COVID information for in Ethiopian and Amharic in English, and for Kenyan Kiswahili and also English. One thing we've added to the platform is online safety. So some tips that are youth focused to help support youth to stay safe online. That we've added that, incorporated that within all of our training. At the onset of COVID, we had colleagues within our livelihood and food security team in Jordan reach out. They were looking for a good solution to be able to provide training as part of life skills and employability skills that they had normally done face-to-face, but they were not able to do as a result of lockdown. And it was a great fit. It's been a huge success for them. They've been able to reach more learners than they had expected to in the time that they've had as part of their transition to employment program. Now, for this particular project, based on the nature of the content, it's actually only privately available. So an administrator can enroll the learners, but it's not something that would be available if you just logged in. And again, that content is available in Arabic, and the platform itself is available in Arabic as well. So when the learners for this particular course complete, they want to print off their certificate of completion, it's fully available in Arabic. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the time that we have been working with Microsoft, or partnering with Microsoft, and using MCT, there's a number of things, and we're still learning that we've learned so far. And one thing is the partnership that's been key to the success. Excuse me. Apurva and Mac talked about the offline modality. It's critical for us. We're working with the Microsoft technical team right now to get to the point where we will be able to test the offline modality. So because offline is essential to many of our contexts and where we're working now and where we're hoping to work with MCT in the future. Also sharing, as was mentioned as well, some of the areas that we would like to see, some of the challenges that we've encountered to use that. And then especially, as I mentioned too, having access to quality content that is relevant, that can be incorporated in an existing project, training program. We've really benefited from that as well. In terms of how we've implemented, we have one instance for our that we're using with our learning beneficiaries, and we've had global support to help onboard new staff who are new to it and train them. We help with some of the troubleshooting issues that may come up, and as well supporting on connectivity. We're currently using the mobile app primarily, hoping to move towards where we can get back into the computer labs with physical distance as needed. But we're also supporting teams not just on the software element, but also the other elements that come together as part of incorporating technology within an education or training program. With having the one instance for similar training programs, it means that we can share content very, very easily across our context. And that's what we're doing with Kenya and Ethiopia. They're using much of the same content, but adapting it depending on the learning needs and the curriculum in their particular context. As we've gone through our first cohort of learners, we're also becoming more comfortable and more familiar with the platform. So looking ahead at the global level, we're going to be using MCT, or we've started to put the materials together to use MCT to train new staff as they come on board, and as we expand to different contexts, instructors. So it will not be one of those publicly available courses. It'll be private. We'll only enroll them, but it will be a source of, I guess, first-time exposure to the platform. They can see what it's like to learn as a learner, and it can also be a great reference point for them if they need to go back and remind themselves how it was to upload a course, for example. They can go back to the platform, look at the resources that we have put aside. And as I mentioned, we're still learning. This is a journey, and we're learning. Our colleagues who are using it on a day-to-day basis are all learning, and we're trying to pull a lot of that learning together and share it across the context. Next slide, please, Apurva. Okay, and just very briefly, our next steps, we're looking to build out how we're using the staff instance, both in terms of the content and accessibility, to translate what we have so that it's more accessible to colleagues where English may not be the language within the work environment or the working language. In many of our youth programs, life skills is one element as part of the holistic offer. So we're looking to see, if there are ways to incorporate the life skills curriculum, which again can be adapted by building on the shared library, that it can be adapted to the various contexts. When we created the very basic online tips for staying safe online, we tested it with a number of youth, we asked them lots of questions, including would you like to know more? And unanimously, all of the youth said, yes, I want to know more about how to be safe online. I want to know more about protecting my information online. And we've also incorporated a little bit about some of the critical thinking skills, about fact checking and so on. So we want to look to see how we can build that out, either by creating it ourselves or partnering or sourcing quality open resources. And we're looking to go beyond the basic skills, again, through support from Microsoft, by having access to the great content through the Microsoft Virtual Academy, to build out and add in HTML5, CSS, and some of the more advanced digital skills specifically for our colleagues working in Kenya. Looking to build out where we're implementing beyond the initial pilot countries. And one thing that we focused on through this last year was focusing on ensuring that we gave the supports to our colleagues so that they could confidently and competently use the technology, that the technology is only as good as the user. So we spent a lot of time and effort working with them and being able to address their learning needs. We're pulling those tools and resources together and looking to build out so that they're well equipped. And then offline, we talked about testing it and making sure that we can, once we test it, then how can we take that to other offices and country areas within the country so that they too can be using offline. Okay, over to you, Apurva. Thanks so much.
Okay. So thank you so much, Robin and Mac. I've been monitoring the chat, so getting a lot of questions, but yeah, a lot of questions about offline access, about features and functionality, which we'll get to in a minute. I just want to, you've all gotten a chance now to see what the platform was designed to do, how specifically UNICEF and NRC are using the platform, both to reach children, like program beneficiaries, and in NRC's case, like program staff as well. What I want to go through just in a minute here is what's next, right? Like this platform is consistently evolving. Like we have an engineering team that's delivering new features, functionality on a near monthly basis. So we have a we have a product roadmap for the next 6-7 months or so, and I'll share that with you here. And then I'll just share a little bit more about how to get up and running. And then we'll dive into some questions. So here we go. And the kind of right on cue, I see Max just asked a question about what is the roadmap for MCT, and here you go. So this is super high level. For those of you who have worked with engineering teams and product roadmaps in the past, you'll know that for each line item here, you could probably spend another 15 or 20 minutes going into it. So just know that this is super duper high level. Well, the stuff that's in the December column here is stuff that recently got developed. And then March and May, June is what we're targeting. So at a high level, those of you who are familiar with Microsoft Learning products, we have a learning hub called Microsoft Learn, which is really focused on using and learning Microsoft technology with the aim of getting a certification at the end. So this is really designed for people who are interested in advanced certifications. And inside of Microsoft, we're adding tons of content to that on a regular basis. So we thought it only made sense to better connect Microsoft Community Training with Microsoft Learn. And so we saw the beginnings of that happen in December. We're going to have the full integration probably in the May-June timeframe, but we're very excited about that. And something that you'll see here in all of the lines, December, March, and May, June, is just improved offline functionality. And so what that means is like we're developing the ability to have a hub device, as we call it. So today offline access typically works in the sense that if you have a mobile phone and you're in a connected area, you can access the training content on your mobile phone, download it onto your mobile phone, and then access it when you're offline. What we're moving towards is the idea of having a central hub device where you can, one central device can have the content on it, and other mobile devices, as long as they're near that hub device, can get that training content from it. So when that hub device is online, it gets the content, and then when it goes offline, other mobile devices can connect to it. And so we're moving closer and closer to that. We're starting the breadcrumbs of it in 2020, like it just occurred in December. As we move towards March and May, June, it'll just be more feature rich and be able to work on low cost devices just at scale. And there's some questions about how do you contextualize the training content per country, and we can do this inside of the platform because there are a few different levels of administration inside of the tool, and we're gonna just make that even better. So in the sense that you'll have an organizational admin, which we have today, and then we have group level admins that are right below it. And so while the organizational admin has access to all of the users, all of the learning content, the group level admins can contextualize it and really make the content specific to their users. And so we're making that better, right? And so without going into too much detail here, we're generally connecting with Microsoft Learn content, improving offline functionality throughout for the next 6-7 months. And that's something that's super duper important to both NRC and UNICEF. And we're making all of the group content just richer, improving reporting tools. That's going to be coming in March, and we have a big accessibility push that's going to be landing in the May-June timeframe as well. So again, super high level. If you have any specific questions, please do reach out to me. Happy to answer them to the best of my ability. I mean, product roadmaps are always evolving, but this is what we're expecting to land in the March and May-June timeframe. So lastly, before we just completely open it up to questions, I wanted to give you a high-level overview of, if you're thinking that, this is interesting, like how would I learn more? How would I get started? This is kind of the general flow. I mentioned that this is built on top of Azure. And it is a free app for you to go. If you have an Azure subscription, you just go into that subscription, you go into the Azure Marketplace, you search for Microsoft Community Training. Again, it's a free download. You download that app onto your Azure subscription. So that's step one here. And then once you've deployed that, you have a few decisions to make. And the first major decision is, how do you want learners to access your platform? You mentioned Robin say that, on her, the staff instance, they're using Okta to log in. If you use Okta, you can certainly do that. For the youth instance, it's about signing on their mobile phone, so they're using their mobile phone number to log in. Again, that's a perfectly valid login type, but you do need to make that decision pretty early on, like whether you're going to use Okta, whether you're going to use your Azure AD instance, so using your work email, whether it's going to be phone number or social. So if you want to log in using your Facebook account or your Google account or your Microsoft account, you can do that as well. So that's a key decision to make. And then beyond that, there are a lot of different ways you can access the tool. So if you look at the learner endpoint at the bottom there, you can create a mobile app. So you can access this like in the Google Play Store. You can create an Android app. You can also access it inside of Teams. And that's something that Mac mentioned before, that one of the instances is going to access MCT inside of Teams, or you can just access it through the web. You also have the opportunity to upload your own logo, like call it whatever you want, create a custom domain. It doesn't have to say Microsoft anywhere, right? Like you own it, you run it, and that's why we can call it a white labeled solution. And when we look at the admin portal up there, Robin also mentioned that Microsoft has a library of content that we can make available to you free of charge. But we also believe that if you have training content of your own that you're already using in other programs or that you want to have on the platform, please upload that as well. Like, we want this to be as contextualized for you and reach the people you're trying to train in the most efficient and scalable manner. So inside of the tool, it's a relatively easy UI to upload your own quizzes, upload your own content, exams, whatever types of training content you want. Again, you can use whatever content from our library that you want, but you can also include your own. And then there's reporting, right? Like I mentioned before, as learners come in and start completing courses and quizzes, as an administrator, you can track that progress and see what courses are popular, like what learners are struggling, and go from there. So that is, at a very, very high level, how you would get up and running. And I think that's it. So here's some resources that I'm going to leave you all with. I can put these links in the chat as well. You'll have this presentation later on. So you can go to the product website. You can dive into the product documentation. There were some questions about a trial version of this product. And so here you go. You can go in to this demo environment and log in with this phone number and that one-time password. You can go in, play around with it, add content as an administrator, go through the content as a learner, just get a sense of how it works. Yeah, so I think that's it. Q&A, like I had some prepared questions for Mac and Robin, but I don't even think we're going to have time for those because there are just so many questions here. So let's see, like one thing that, we can just start off and kind of factor in some of the questions that are coming in from the chat. Maybe we'll start with this question for Robin. There's a question about contextualizing the training content per country, right? And you mentioned that you have one learning instance for your youth, but it's occurring in 3 different countries. Could you maybe just talk about how that works and how you're able to get the right types of content for each learner, even though they're in 3 different countries?
Yep, happy to. Thanks for the question, and thanks, Apurva. The way the teams have done it is that our teams working within the training centers or working as part of those education programs are actually part of the development in terms of what, and make the decision making in terms of what goes up on the platform. So we have taken the Microsoft videos as a starting point. However, for example, in Ethiopia, additional content that is normally used as part of their training program has been put up into the platform. All of our quizzes and exams are also developed by our teams working on the ground to make sure that we're tracking, we're assessing and we're monitoring the learning. The colleagues in Jordan are not using the Microsoft content. They're actually using their own content as well. So there are options with PowerPoint presentations, PDF, Word documents, whole host of different audio and video files that can be used to as part of the learning experience. And you have the opportunity to organize how a learner can go through the content if they're part of a structured program. You can organize the sequence, whether or not they can actually jump ahead or not. There's lots of different small functionalities that help to contextualize it, that help to create that unique experience, depending on the learner's needs and depending on the needs of the program.
Great. I mean, Mac, is there anything you can add for that? Like, what is your, I guess, content strategy? Because you have so many different instances across the world. How do you keep that quality bar, I guess?
We would kill ourselves if we tried to manage it all centrally. So instead, and I glazed over the fact that we localize the platform for the language of instruction and any other languages requested by offices. So we're able to have multiple languages that you can use on the same instance. That is entirely in the hands of our country colleagues. So UNICEF's offices, they run their own learning passports, more or less, as I mentioned. And the content selection components are done usually in partnership with government there. So you have concepts where there is formal curriculum, and then the teams in country will sit with government counterparts and look to map in some very nice supplementary curriculum into the formal curriculum, but it is entirely done place by place, instance by instance, and even within instances, kind of group by group. So we see the great variety there, and we have those content partnerships I mentioned, and then the very vibrant OER environment ecosystem. There's no shortage of fantastic stuff out there. We make it available to our countries. We don't tell them what to do, and so it really is one by one in terms of that selection process. And then we have some expertise in UNICEF that can help people guide really what the best content to meet a specific user need is.
Got it. And we just got a question about the end user devices, which I think is important as well. So maybe again, I'll start with Robin. How are learners accessing the learning, and what devices are they using? Is there any a funding element of that? So yeah, maybe Robin, if we could start with you and then go to Mac.
Yep, I'm happy to. So through COVID, there was the requirement to have, primarily the requirement to have a smart Android phone so that they could access the mobile app. And for those youth who did not have that device, they've been prioritized for the next cohort when there can be more of the face-to-face learning. For the youth projects, we do already have computer labs as part of our youth centers, as part of our other training. So they would be coming to the centers when it's safe and when it's possible. We've also looked at purchasing tablets, SIM-enabled tablets as well, to use that as another option to open up how we can provide access to our learners. So it's really been quite limited because of COVID to having remote learning for the most part for most of our learners.
And Mac, same question for you.
The device question is always a fun one in this. So, the web application, COVID, people self-learning methodologies, bring your own device, right? We weren't distributing stuff. The mobile application, similar. where, you know, if you have an Android phone essentially, and I think it's backwards compatible like KitKat, so older Android OS versions will work, no problem. And really, we've approached, you know, the web application as anything with a browser, right? If you have a browser, you can essentially access the Learning Passport instances offline. And I saw a number of questions around this, Apurva, so I think it's worth
yeah, please.
about.
Mhm.
Devices in the offline space are really super interesting, right? And we're trying to, I know, as UNICEF, really kind of get to the hardest to reach places, which you're talking around devices that, on the one hand, have some high performance and can withstand some pretty serious environmental stressors, but on the other hand, are super lightweight, right? In terms of their components, so as not to pull a lot of power, right? Because those places without a lot of connectivity often power is an issue too. So the concept that Apurva talked about in terms of a hub device, or what I call the cloud in the box, it's not the same as an application on a tablet, right? Which does some stuff. But what we kind of position it in UNICEF as we're really evolving this thinking is recreating a digital learning experience, not just you know, using an application, but the hub device essentially you can think of it as a server. There is an inbuilt networking capability with a router that creates a local area network, so like a Wi-Fi network, you know, in your house. And then users have devices that they log into that hub device with a browser. That's not connected to the internet, but it is actually performing as if you're in a connected environment, right? You're opening a browser, you're logging in, you're putting your credentials into the system. And utilizing that type of thing. So you can have very kind of the cheaper, lower end tablets for the learner devices. And then the hub device itself, we just got our first prototype because we have a big significant hardware component of working on this in UNICEF, because we understand we're going to have to get a lot of hub devices out there, which can even like run on DC. So direct current, right? And that's like a battery, those type of things. So to pull the least amount of power, but to handle the most amount of concurrent users, right? Because we want a lot of users logging in at the same time. And we're even looking at some higher end devices where we can create some pretty big networks, like, you know, half a kilometer, and log in hundreds of people at the same time, all learning in a different speed, in different content sets that are more tailored to them, you know, different groups, different grades, different uses, but at the same time. So that's really what we think of as interesting. UNICEF will have a pretty big device component in the offline space where we will have, you know, minimum specs and requirements, but we also want anyone that has the ability to get on the internet to head over to their Learning Passport instances and use the web application. And then if you're on the go, the mobile application works too. I have to say the web application is built for a phone form factor, so it looks lovely when you like open it on a phone or a tablet as well.
All right. Well, so thank you for that. I think we answered that. There was another question from Paula about, I think this is for Mac specifically, but you localized ownership of the different Learning Passport instances, but does that allow for any content sharing? So if like one office creates training content, is another office able to like localize that content if they want? Like, what does that sharing look like?
100%. And so Apurva put it in a slide. There is essentially, we'll eventually see a central content store where people will be able to share, right? We'll be able to publish a bunch of stuff and users can pull down to their instances, but also we're seeing a lot of cross-pollination. Localization is something, due to the diversity of the Learning Passport implementations, that we spend a lot of time on, right? And it's not just language. You know, contextually relevant things is important to meet learners where they are and with what they understand. And so we do really see a lot of beautiful content being developed out of country offices. For example, you know, our colleagues in Laos are developing some fantastic stuff. Nigerian colleagues will develop some really fantastic stuff. I've seen some beautiful things come out of Timor as well. In that development, we advise them to make things as internationalizable as possible. So in terms of characters, like, you know, use shapes instead of people, or use, you know, things that are easily portable across different contexts. But at the end of the day, context is king. So we definitely emphasize and promote that sharing. But oftentimes that will involve some tailoring at the local level, and that, you know, is beyond just an audio file. So it gets a little complicated, but it is something really vibrant that we're excited about.
Got it. So I think we might have time for a couple more questions. And this is a question that just came in from Gabriel, and then we'll get to a question from Paula. And I have my answer to this, but I'm curious to get your answers to it. And so I'll start with Robin. What are the, I mean, I know that you both have worked with different learning tools, learning platforms in the past. Like what would you say is different about MCT? And like, why would you say that this platform, works for your use cases? Like, and what are the other types of platforms that maybe you evaluated previously? So again, well, I'll just leave it open-ended to that extent. Robin, I'll start with you.
I think one of the things that stood out for me with MCT was the mobile app, and again, that's specific for our use case as well, from some of the other platforms we worked with previously. Yeah, I think that's one of the key elements, and again, that's something that's been very important to our learners. Even if we were going to be having the blended learning where the learners would actually be in the classrooms, we would still make that available to our learners. I think that one thing as well that I think is unique to MCT, we have 5 minutes left, is that it's also something that's very flexible in terms of who you can use it with. We're using it with staff. We're also using it. We will be using it with instructors and staff for the youth instance, but then we're also using it with our beneficiaries, and everyone's having a fluid experience. It's working really well. So I think that that's also another key element that sets MCT apart.
I was talking to a colleague that works in covering Eastern Asia and Pacific, talking to our office in Kiribati this morning, and he said he gave a demo and it lasted 4 minutes, which to me, normally you're like, whoa, you must have missed some functionality, you must have missed some big stuff. MCT is really simple, right? There's a lot of self-service stuff that is kind of relatively intuitive, and I think, some of the rules and a lot of the technology I've worked with is trying to do a few things and do them very well, then trying to do a lot of different things and not do them as well. And I think that the simplicity of the platform, if you can demo in 5 minutes and someone on the other end says, yeah, okay, looks pretty good, that is a sign of ease of implementation and administration, right? Admins can do a lot of other stuff, but it's really a drag and drop interface. You can upload a bunch of different things, sequence them in a way and publish them. We deal with a lot of different types of content formats, being, interactive stuff like HTML5 and H5P being the more fun things. But at the end of the day, it's pretty simple to use. And that, when you talk about diversity, like, Robin and I think really both see that as a central thing in our jobs, as getting, this out there into people's hands. It's also pretty simple to use. And that has been a big benefit, I think, to the uptake, and our colleagues and government counterparts realizing that's it. I mean, I was on with the Nigerian Ministry of Education yesterday, and the same thing. The demo was, 5 minutes, and they said, okay, yeah, we get it. And I didn't miss things. I wasn't like papering over some big spots, right? Implementation is actually the harder part than using the tool.
Yeah. So I'll wrap up. There have been a couple of questions about pricing, so I'll try to answer those as best as I can. So I mentioned that the platform itself is free, right? Like, it's on the Azure Marketplace. It's a free download. You download that onto your subscription. The content that we provide is also free, right? Like, we have a training content library that we can provide to you. And right now it could be better, but I mentioned on the product roadmap, we're moving towards like a course marketplace where inside of the app you'll just be able to click and get the content that you're looking for and add your own. Where there is a price associated with it is on the consumption side of things. So what that means is, today this is all built on top of Azure and on your Azure subscription. And as you're adding users onto your platform, as you're adding content onto your platform, it's all being stored on top of your Azure instance. And the more your learners are consuming this content, like whether it's videos, PDFs, that does consume Azure. And so, your build, if you will, based on consumption. We see that, all eligible nonprofits, all nonprofits are eligible for a $3,500 Azure credit. And for a lot of organizations, that credit is sufficient to cover all of your costs for a year. But we also work with many organizations, including NRC and UNICEF, to provide additional Azure grants that can help you, use the platform, for at least like an 18, 24-month period. And we're happy to work with all of you to figure out what that right level of credit is, so that you can get up and running. You can make sure that you can train everyone that you want to get trained on the platform. We have calculators. We have a lot of different things. It's a little bit too much to go into right now. But if you are interested in learning more about the platform, how it's priced, how Azure credits work, reach out to me. We have tons of content that we can share with you. But we do want to make this as easy as possible to get up and running. So that's what our pricing calculator is for. That's what all of the credits are for. That's what all of our training content is for. So yeah, I think that's generally it. There are a lot of questions I didn't get a chance to answer. I will go through all of these questions and try to address them as best as I can after this session. So later today, tomorrow, I'll get back to you. With that said, thank you all for joining. Robin, Mac, any last thoughts that you have? I can start with you, Robin, maybe. Put you on the spot.
No, it's great. No, it's been wonderful, and a lot of amazing questions. And again, you can reach out, and we can keep the conversation going. Thank you so much, and great morning. I guess maybe it's afternoon now for most people, and evening to all.
Watch this space, I think, would be my parting words. Really glad everyone got a chance to join. Sorry, I don't think Robin and I really got to get to the comments too much, but get in touch if there's anything specific you'd like to ask me about the Learning Passport. And really excited for what's ahead. Hopefully we get some rest before that.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Stay safe. Have a good rest of your week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.